going on, guys? My name is Tim Roswick, and today I wanted to talk about starting. We talk about starting a lot on this channel, and we talk about finishing a lot, because I think those are two of the biggest problems in any kind of creative endeavor, let alone game development. But specifically, I want to talk about something that I think is a concept that I've kind of learned to live by, and that's starting before you think you're ready. So I've done a lot of stuff in my life that I wasn't really ready for. But it didn't start out that way, right? Like I always thought in high school, I always thought like, okay, one day I'm going to be ready to start a technology company. One day I'm going to be ready to make a game, right? And I would always just work towards it, right? Like I would try and learn skills. I would read up on stuff. I'd buy a bunch of books. Never forget, like I literally, when I started with this thing called FPS Creator, and the creators of FPS Creator had this coding language called Dark Basic Pro, and I bought a big black book on Dark Basic Pro. I forget what it's called, but it was like the basics or something. It was like a coding book. It was like this thick. It was like massive, and I sat there and I read that whole book cover to cover because I didn't feel like I was ready to follow the examples yet because I was still learning it. So I just read the book cover to cover, like I read a novel or something. And as I would learn in my life, waiting until I was ready was never the right answer, because every time I was ready and I started and I got shit done, it was too late, man. And if it wasn't too late, it was could have got so much shit ready to go. This YouTube channel, man, I wanted to start this YouTube channel 3.5 years ago. I started buying equipment. I started buying a DSLR, mic for it, a tripod. I bought all the stuff, started learning Adobe Premiere, and I just kept doing this stuff to like get myself ready to make a YouTube channel. And I didn't do it. I didn't do it 3.5 years ago when I started Game Dev Underground, the site. I didn't do it 2 years ago when I took a road trip and worked on a bunch of games that I wanted to post about. I didn't do it until 10 months ago. And when I did, I was like, wow, this is awesome, man. Like, I get to start a YouTube channel. I get to talk about the things that I'm passionate about, and I get to build a community and hang out with a bunch of dudes on live streams, like, that are all passionate about the same thing I'm passionate about. I've had the most fun in my entire life building a community, meeting awesome people, like working on games that I want to work on, sharing my knowledge with people, like legit helping people out, having people tell me that like they're extremely appreciative. Like that means so much to me. And now I'm sitting here thinking like, yo, I could have did this 3.5 years ago. I could have done it a long ass time ago, but I didn't. I thought I had to wait till I was ready. And my message for you today is just that, like, you should start before you think you're ready. Because every time you're ready, you waited too long. There's so many things that you learn by starting that you wouldn't learn in a book. And I know for me, I've always had like anxiety about starting. I've always had worry about what people are going to think. I've always been super anti-conflict. So I was terrified of like starting something people wouldn't like. And this is especially true when it comes to like monetizing my stuff, right? Like when it comes to charging money for something, it gives me a lot of anxiety to get to that point where like, okay, now I got to ask money from this person for this thing. Well, no matter what it was, like back in my marketing company, back in all the startups I started, you know, when I would send clients an invoice or whatever, it would just give me anxiety to get to that point. But I realized that like, had I not started where I had that anxiety, where I didn't feel like I was ready, where I felt like a fraud, where I wasn't sure that I could do the thing, right? I wouldn't have learned the thing. When I started my marketing company, man, I was 18 years old. I had packed up a suitcase and flew out to Los Angeles because my dad lived there and he wanted me to visit him for 2 months. He was also having some trouble with vertigo, which is something that makes you really, really dizzy. So he was having trouble like getting around the city and he needed me to drive him and stuff. So I was out there to help him for 2 months. And I got an opportunity from one of his friends owned one of the biggest development properties or development companies in Los Angeles. And basically what they did is they would buy properties and they would turn them into lofts and then they would rent them out. And that's all they did around Los Angeles. They would buy like old warehouses, turn them into like rustic, chic, hipster type of lofts, and then they would rent them out for really high prices in up and coming neighborhoods. And they needed a guy to do their website and their marketing. And my dad was like, hey, my son could do it. And the dude was like, can you do it? And I was like, I marketed one product in my entire life. That was a piece of software that I wrote when I was like 16. I read a bunch of marketing books. I was nowhere near ready to take on the entire marketing for a multi-million-dollar company, a company that had close to $1 billion in assets at that point. But because of the way that the company was structured, because of the opportunity, and because of my dad, like, it was an extreme opportunity, and I just said yes. And with that suitcase that I went to visit my dad with, I never went back. Everything in my room, everything I had, just left it all. I stayed in Los Angeles with that suitcase, and that's how my marketing company was born. But it goes a step further than that, right? I didn't know anything about SEO. And one day someone asks, hey, Tim, do you do SEO? SEO stands for search engine optimization, by the way. And a lot of people that want their websites done want their websites optimized for search engines. And someone asked me, Tim, do you do SEO? And I was like, no idea how to do it. I'm terrified to do it. I'm terrified to accept this client. I'm terrified to let this client down. But you know what? Something I need to do. I'm going to tell this client, yes, we offer that service. And I took that service and I got my ass on the computer and I learned how to make that shit happen. I was nowhere near ready to take on that client, but I did before I was ready. And because of that, I worked extra hard to make that client happy. It's one of my best clients. I still talk to them to this day. We have a great relationship. We don't do work together anymore because obviously I don't own the company, but they become a really good friend in my life. And that's just another example, man. Like, had I waited till I was ready, till I read all the stuff and did all the research and looked up all the things and had an exact checklist of what to do and knew exactly what I was doing, had I waited till I had all the experience, I wouldn't have been able to build the company that I built. There's so many things in my life where I feel like just starting before I was ready, even though it sounds like the worst thing you can do, it sounds chaotic, right? It sounds horrible. It sounds like you're setting yourself up for failure. But by starting before you're ready, you learn all the things that you need to get ready. Once you're ready, like, there are so many times where I've waited till I was ready, and then when I started, I realized that everything that I learned was wrong. Because I learned it from books that were written 5 years ago. Because I learned it from the internet, where people might not be the most qualified to write about it. Because I learned from sources that maybe didn't try it. Maybe they're copying other people's articles without knowing what the hell they're talking about. And just the act of starting. Like, I talk about this a lot on this channel. It's a recurring theme. It comes up in a lot of different videos. But the act of doing, the act of actually getting shit done, the act of actually going through the process and setting things up and doing all that, I feel like it's so important because you learn so much just by doing that it's insane to try and do anything else. It's insane to try and do a bunch of research. It's insane to try and do anything. Just do the thing. Just start. And I'm not saying that research is bad. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have an idea what you're going. I'm especially not saying that, you know, if a client hires you to do something, you should not know what you're doing. But for me, anytime I took on something that I wasn't sure I could do, I always wanted to make sure that the client was okay. And I knew, I had confidence enough in myself that I was going to deliver for that client, whether it broke me to death or not. And with game development, man, like this YouTube channel, I wasn't ready to start the YouTube channel. The Finish Friday stuff, I was not ready for that. I was not ready to finish a game every single week for 8 weeks, but I did it. So if you're sitting around thinking like, hey, I'm going to do a bunch of research, I'm going to watch a bunch of Tim's videos, I'm going to do all this, and then I'm going to be ready to make games, you need to stop that. because you should start before you're ready. So that's my message for you today. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment down below. If you've ever started before you thought you were ready and you learned something, leave that down below. If you disagree with me and you have a question or something like that, ask it down below. Be happy to answer. But once again, I'm Tim Roswick, and I will see you again tomorrow.